Is anyone already here? Mhm. Mhm. Yay. Otto!
Hey Lisa, how are you?
Yay, good. Good to see you. You're like freaking spot on time.
How's it going? Good to see you again.
Good to see you again too. And I'm trying to see if folks have joined us yet. But yeah, have you had a good weekend?
Yeah, so far so good. How about you?
Yeah, it was good. I was up really late editing on Friday. I, to the point where my eye was twitching. I was like, I need to like adjust, I think, my schedule and time management to do that.
It's probably when the eye starts twitching, that's probably a good time to call it quits.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, it was so bad that the next morning when I woke up and like by the time I got up, like the episode had been posted. And then I like got on to like, check comments and then reply. And then I started twitching again. I was like, holy crap. Like, okay, I need to like put down the screens for today. Um, oh my gosh. Okay, trying to see. Let's see if I can see the live chat. Okay. And to see if people are here yet. Okay, I think so. Da, da, da.
Oh, it's like a few people are starting to trickle in.
Yes, and I know one guy. He's like, I had some unexpected guests show up, but I'll watch the video later. So, yeah, for anybody who's yay, thumbs up. For anybody who wasn't able to actually make it today, you can just watch the video later. But for everybody who was able to come, is here with us now. It's really nice to have the live experience too. And I know people will have some questions for you, and I have like lots of things to chat with you about and everything. So I I'm trying to think of like, should I go ahead and just get started? Um
Why don't you start with a few softball questions, and we'll see who starts to trickle in.
okay. Oh. Okay. Somebody needs me to resend the link. Okay. Let me see that really
This is the
fast.
magic of live television, folks.
Yeah. Thank you, Otto. Just keep going with it. Keep going with it. Um
So, how many people from are out of town tonight?
Yeah, I was gonna say, oops. So we have people joining us today from the West Coast in the United States to the East Coast. This is not including you and me. It's not- and as well as England. I
Oh
think the
wow!
person in England gets the reward for the farthest. So I was also kind of not sure. I'm like, I wonder if he's gonna wait and watch it later, or he'll actually join us today. Because it's a little late his time. But all right, let me see. Hold on, let me just get this link to one more person. Do. And what have you been up to this last week in the world of trains and your many roles?
Actually, a couple of things. Working at the Railroad Museum, I volunteer at the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum. It's just 20 minutes outside of where I live here in Rochester, New York, and we're getting ready for our Santa trains. So we started pulling out our Christmas decorations and getting the station decorated for the season and making sure the trains are ready. So that was fun. And then Saturday evening started building my model railroad. Finally getting around to building a model railroad in the basement. So that was fun. Started getting some of the bench work and the lumber together for that and made a little bit of progress. So that was fun.
My gosh, you live and breathe this stuff, it seems. And then you're really, I mean, one company, but a couple publications. And then, like you said, you're volunteer at the museum, and then you've got
Yep.
your at-home projects and happenings. So lots going on.
Yeah, it never ends, or it seems like it never ends.
Oh my god. Okay. I think I think we're good. Let me just double check and see if there's any other person writing with a thing. Okay.
Howard Alexander says hello from England. Hello, hello, Howard.
Oh, yes! Yay, Howard! Oh my gosh, okay. I'm so glad you made it, Howard. I was just saying, I was so curious. I was like, wow, is he gonna stay up and make it a late night and have some train talk with us, or will he watch it later? I again, you get the reward for the long for the farthest away. And I really, I'll just say this and we'll talk more about this, but for me, like having folks from all over, I love that. I for me it's all about like the human connection piece. And so I love that we have folks joining us today, again, west coast in the United States, all the way to the east coast, all the way to England. So woohoo, and nice to have this live experience. I've been really enjoying doing episodes of Train Talk with Lisa. And when I get your comments, there's an exchange there, and it's a really wonderful community that's growing very fast. But having this live exchange and having a conversation with someone where you're here too and you're able to comment along the way and ask your questions, I'm just, yeah, thrilled to be here. So, yeah.
Howard says it's 11:30 where he is, and he's been up since 6 a.m. So, Howard, thanks for hanging in there with us.
Yes, thank you. Grab some tea, Howard, or something. Some tea. But hopefully, yeah, we'll keep going and we'll keep the energy alive. I love it. Oh my gosh.
And
Well,
I see Derek Boone is here. Derek, where are you from? Comment, let us know where you're from.
excellent. Thank you, Otto.
Yeah, it's nice to see people queuing up.
Yes, nice. It's all the energy of other people in your comments makes a big impact. So Otto was saying a little, yes, okay, North Carolina. We got North Carolina. I think there's someone from California, if I remember correctly, and all the way in England. So I guess we'll get started a little bit here. I know Otto, you already said a few things, but just to reiterate, or if you're just now hopping on, um, Otto, I mean, he first got into trains, and he'll talk more about this, with train trips with his dad, going to New York City, going to visit his dad in New York City. So he has been a long time rail fan, and as he was just mentioning, has all sorts of train happenings going on in his life, day to day and throughout the weekend. And here we are on a Sunday night, and he's here with us. He has an interesting a journey that I can kind of relate to a little bit and connect with. He's a creative guy, and has worked with in advertising and marketing over the years before he got where he is now, the current company and Train Publications. He studied at the Rochester Institute of Technology. So, anyways, a very talented and smart guy, and then made his way, uh, and there's so much to say. So first, I just want to say I met Otto at the National Train Show in Long Beach, California, and immediately it was like, okay, this is a nice person, great energy. And so it's been since the summer, since beginning of August, that I've seen Otto, but we stayed in touch, and so I'm glad to have him. On top of that, if I backtrack a little bit to the summer, I was in Ohio filming. I met with a family friend who's a real railroader guy. He's a retired foreman and worked on derailments and everything. You can see those episodes. And when I was there, he gave me this episode.
Oh,
I'm
neat. Yeah,
this
yeah.
magazine. I'm not even talking about it. This magazine. In fact, I was noticing it's from 1952. I don't know if it's backwards. It's
Wow.
1952. I literally just spilled milk on it earlier. I'm like, am I going to be its downfall? It's made it like this far, and now it's going to be destroyed. Anyways, so originally, and we'll talk more about this too, there was a merger between da da da, and is where Otto is today. So, anyways, but okay, so I've had like various connections to Otto and his work. So before meeting him at the National Train Show, seeing this magazine, and then when I met him, it was like, putting the pieces together. But also, just to backtrack a little bit more, Stay with me. I know I'm all over the place. Um, Earlier this year, soon after I had started this series, which was really kind of like the end of May, I did an episode of my dad's train store, the Train Loft. And it was technically the third video I put out on YouTube at his store, but it was really kind of the start of this series. And when I was getting that going, there was an opportunity to connect with NBC and sort of share a pitch of the show to them. And so when I was doing that, so again, this is before the National Train Show, before I got a hold of this. And as I was doing my research and, to do this pitch, I came across this quote that we'll also come back to. There's something exciting about trains that transcends cultures. And Otto, that was a quote from Otto. And
That
so I
was me,
have
yeah.
this, yeah, like I have this slide in my pitch deck with this quote, with Otto's quote. And so then to later meet you was really cool. It was like, oh my gosh, and I love stuff like that, and the way like we find our people and our things, and it's like a small world after all and everything. So anyways, to get back, can you tell me, we'll just start somewhat from the beginning, but we'll get all sorts, Otto too, it's like when you're a journalist, the inside scoop. And so that's pretty cool. You have to be on the up and up, and people share things with you and they give you extra access to stuff. I don't know if you watched the episode I put out yesterday, but it was at the Santa Fe at Union Station, the
Yeah, that was
3751.
great.
And so that, like, whatever, got to go in the cab. It was really fun. So, anyways, but Otto also just he's got the up and up on things going on. So he's going to get to share lots of kind of stuff like that with us. But I just want to start with your introduction to trains, and like for many people, it is a connection to family, and for you it is. So tell me a little bit about that.
I I think I think my youngest exposure to trains was through my dad, and we lived in the suburbs of New York, up in Westchester County, about an hour away from the city, 45 minutes away from the city. And he had a furniture workshop in New York that he went to every day. And I got to be like 4 or 5 years old. Um, he would take me down to his workshop to visit and hang out with him and give my mom a break. And we would ride the train from our town. And in those days, this is like the early 1980s, and the trains were in a real period of transition. Um, the uh, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the public agency, was just getting in the process of taking over from the private railroads. So the trains were in like really bad shape. Then they've been neglected for so long. They were kind of filthy. They were breaking down, um, and I loved every minute of it. These old streamlined diesels, FL9s, pulling the trains. The trains were these old streamlined coaches from the 1940s that were still heated with steam. So like it was, I remember being winter and there's steam wisping between the connections between the trains. Um, so me, like 5 years old, having this opportunity to ride essentially a train from the 1940s, I loved it. The people who had to ride the train every day probably didn't like it so much. Um, but then riding that train, and then we arrive, at what's arguably like the cathedral of railroading, Grand Central Terminal in New York City. I don't think there could be a better introduction to what um, trains are all about than visiting a place like Grand Central. And even in the kind of shabby condition Grand Central was in the 80s, it just made this huge impression on me. The giant clock in the center at the information desk and the giant tall cathedral windows with the sunlight streaming in, and just all that making an impression on me. Um, and I think my dad kind of recognized that I kind of had an interest in railroading. And so I remember when I was 5 years old, I remember right around the holidays, got a gift of a Lionel train set. And this goofy little Lionel train set with its like steam engine and its box car and its caboose. Um, that's kind of what got me started, setting up that train on the living room rug and watching it fly around the track and trying to recreate those train trips with my dad. I remember
Mhm.
at some point, we were at a tag sale. I got some old pieces of track to help expand the set. And here I am on the living room rug trying to recreate, Grand Central Terminal with its 40 tracks and me having two switches and a piece of straight track. And it wasn't quite the same. Um, but then I found in my elementary school library, um, school librarian noticed I like trains too because I was taking out all the train books I could find in the school library. And we had a magazine that we got, and it was called Model Railroader. And this was about people who built scale models. They tried to make them look as realistic as they could. And I was just enamored, like seeing all these photos of all these people's like fine scale model work. And there were also articles about how people built these models. And
Mm.
it just opened up a whole new world of the hobby to me. And I remember I just like turned to my dad one day and I'm looking at my like toy trains on the floor and I'm like, even at like 6, 7, 8 years old, I knew this wasn't the same. And I said, Dad, I want to make my trains more real. How do I do that? And I think that just kind of sparked this whole lifelong interest in learning about not only how to build models, but also learning about the world of real railroads also.
Wow. I love all of that. There's just like a million things going through my mind to follow up with on for you. It's funny when you talk about Grand Central Station. I have been there with my dad and my stepmom's from Long Island, and so we've been up there a bunch of times. And today, in fact, you might see when they arrive, my sister and my niece are coming in through these doors in a little bit, and they're coming to visit. And she's 8. You may have seen her in the episode, the Sonoma Train Town. So I'm just loving introducing things to her. She actually kind of introduced that spot to me, but tomorrow there's a tree lighting at Union Station here in Los Angeles. And so I'm really thrilled to take her to that because that will be like, thinking of your experience Grand Central with your dad and you're like, wow,
Sure.
clock and all the things. And she's never been to an iconic train station and something like that before either. So
Well,
I'm
and you mentioned Union Station, and when I was in Long Beach over the summer, that was my first visit to the Long Beach, Los Angeles area. I've been to Southern California a bunch of times, but never to that area. And I'm like, ever since I learned about Union Station in Los Angeles, I've always wanted to visit it. And, it's such a beautiful, iconic Art Deco monument to transportation. It was really built at a time of really unbridled optimism when the city of Los Angeles should not, we're talking about the depths of the Depression, and they had the audacity to build this beautiful, like architecturally significant station. And that was a real treat to get to finally see that in person. And it's really interesting, over the years, so many train stations, they fall victim, they're just not needed anymore. They get torn down because they're forgotten about, they're not part of the community. And I think LA is just really fortunate that not only were they able to recognize the value of keeping it, but now it's had sort of a renaissance, um, where not only does it serve Amtrak, but you also have the Metro like commuter trains, and you also have the Metro light rail that all come in a Union Station too. So um, it's
yes.
nice that not only is it seeing its original purpose fulfilled, but its role is expanded with the addition of commuter trains and light rail.
I'm so glad you added all of that. And I don't know if you guys have seen, but I have a Union Station episode that's also I go salsa dancing there. So the one yesterday was this big rail safety event where they did collaborate with Amtrak and the Metrolink locally in Los Angeles. And then they are doing other events, film screenings, dancing, the tree lighting, obviously tomorrow. I think one thing that has helped keep them alive or maybe like when you said that it's continued to thrive and there's been an investment in keeping it nice and everything is the fact that there's so many films shot there. Is just the entertainment industry, and
Sure.
because it ranks way up there in terms of locations, and not, not always that it's, in many cases it's not a train station in the scene, but it can double for, so many period things and different stuff. So yeah, it's definitely used a lot. I know the Fred Harvey room sat
Mhm.
dormant for a long time, but then got all redone, and that's a place that I'm hoping to visit and do an episode in sometime in the coming year. So yeah, yeah, love. I mean, there aren't many, and also, as you said, it was one of the last, if not the last, like kind of grand train stations that was built.
Yeah. I
So
mean, when you look at major cities across the country, a lot of the larger stations like Grand Central Terminal was built in 1913. I think Kansas City Union Station was 1914. Um, so a lot of the really grand stations we think of in the major cities were built around the time right around World War One. And you had a few stations built in the period between the wars, but really it was that was really the period where you're going to see like the really large scale projects like Union Station, like Grand Central. Um, you had a few stations that were built after the war, but nothing on the scale of what you see there. And I think also what's nice about Union Station is that besides being used for transit, like you said, they also there's also other spaces that can be used for community events. Like I know the whole ticketing area, there's a whole area off to the side. There used to be like, 20 ticket windows where people would line up to buy their tickets to go all around the country and whatever. They don't really need it. They didn't need that ticketing space anymore. You just buy your ticket from a ticket machine at a kiosk. Um, so now that whole space is available for public events. Even here in New York, Grand Central Terminal, they have to balance between it being a major transit hub in New York City, but they also have some spaces they've carved out. Like I know right now, the old waiting room area is being transformed into a big holiday market, which is very popular.
mhm.
Um, I've seen them hold tennis matches inside Grand Central Terminal. So I think it's a whole thing where it's like, yes, it's for travelers, and yes, it's for people using the station, but you also have to find a way to tie these things back to the community and make them public spaces as well.
Absolutely. And for you guys listening and a part of this too, feel free to make any comments if there's a favorite iconic train station near where you are or that you've been to that you want to mention, or anything you want to share. If there's a holiday market or something going on at a station. I mean, I love hearing about things in different places and around the world. Um
Derek says that your Union Station episode is his favorite.
yeah, I know it's like, they all bring me joy, and I hope, different people appreciate different things for different reasons and stuff. That For me, that one, and if you haven't seen it, there's a scene where I meet some young guys that had hadn't even heard of the Surfliner train that goes in and out of Union Station, and I don't know where they were headed that evening, but I mean, they were like in high school, a bunch of high
Yeah.
schoolers that had their skateboards and their musical instruments or whatever, and I mentioned that there's salsa dancing, and you kind of assume that they're like, okay, yeah, whatever, lady. But they're like very nice and personable. And then sure enough, after I go and I see the surf liner and I go back in the area where there's salsa dancing, these guys are just not worrying about it, not worrying about their image or how they're doing things, or that they don't know what to do per se. And the camaraderie between them, um dance, I don't know, it was just, that was that was something that touched me in that one. But yeah, so thank you, Derek, for sharing about that. So now they're the two. There's the one yesterday, and then the other one, the last of the great train stations or whatever. And I'm sure there'll be more this year. Like I said, maybe the Fred Harvey room might work something out. Is there anything you want to say, Otto, about what you ended up studying in school, and then the period of time after school but before, where you are now and working in advertising and working in marketing, and then and then getting to, I think one of the greatest things, it's like this, it's like Train Talk with Lisa, when you enjoy, filming, for example, and you enjoy story and enjoy connecting with
Sure.
people and enjoy the nostalgia and whatever, when you put a bunch of things together that you love, it's just like the best. So I just want to hear about, yeah, your original studies and then the work you did in marketing and then finding your way to like putting all the stuff together and with trains.
I've always been interested in art since I'm a little kid. Um, Always drawing, drawing anything. Um, I drew a lot of like cityscapes, and I think because I was just influenced by all those visits to the city with my dad, and um, I think it's probably tied into trains. I drew a lot of trains, drew a lot of things like that. But just always liking to draw, and I never had any formal art training when I was young. It was just always just me doodling around. But going back to those magazines I found when I was a little kid in the school library, um, these magazines were written for like an adult level and for adult hobbyists, but it didn't stop me from reading them. And I didn't understand everything I was reading, but I was definitely picking up most of what was going on. But I think I also picked up on how the magazine was literally put together, how it was designed, how they laid out the photos and the type and how the body copy flowed and how the like just how all the mechanics of what makes a magazine enjoyable to read. And I think it got me interested in magazines at an early age. And my mom was a graphic designer as well.
Mhm.
And I remember just picking up some of the books that she had about graphic design and art and some of the old magazines that she kept. And I think it all just made an impression on me. And I always wanted to go and do something creative with my life. And even though I had a strong interest in trains, all my teachers were like, "Oh, you're going to work for the railroad someday." And I would just say yes because I couldn't formulate a better answer for them. But I like trains and I like riding trains. I like being around trains. I didn't necessarily want to work for the railroad. That operating the trains wasn't as interesting to me as being around them. And as I got older, and I was always interested in typefaces and fonts and design, and my dad's loft space in New York City, where he had his workshop, he ended up subletting part of it to some graphic design to a graphic design studio. And here I am, like 9, 10, 11 years old, hanging around and sort of interning at this design studio. And I got a taste of what it was like. It was a weird transition period working with like paste ups and mechanicals and physically making up the documents that make up a design, transitioning to working on a Macintosh computer and doing it all electronically in a page layout program and just getting exposed to that early on. And then in high school, I got more involved in that. We had a Macintosh lab, and I was doing some more design work and getting into that. And I felt I got my own computer and started, doing a lot of that stuff. And it's like I definitely want to get into something related to graphic design. And my mom wanted me to go to like a pure art school. And while that could have been attractive, I really wanted to go to a school that had like a breadth of not just art. I wanted to be exposed to everything because I don't believe that art exists in a vacuum, no matter what art it is you're creating. Um, if you're an artist and you only associate with other artists and you only do art things in your life and you don't open your mind to anything else, you're kind of creating your own tunnel vision because you don't see anything else. And for your art to be relatable to other people, you have to have some contextual experience. So I ended up going to Rochester Institute of Technology, which is a big engineering and technology school up in Rochester, New York. And it turns out they have a really great, not only just an art and design program, uh, also illustration, photography, printing. Um, just all the core foundations of what art and design are, plus like an excellent craft school, ceramics and textiles and industrial design and just so many different pieces of it. And I'm like, what a great environment. And so I was really fortunate that I got to learn the fundamentals of design at a school like that because it really gave me more um I hate to use the word exposure, but it gave me like just exposure to so many other different things. And being at a technology school, I was able to dabble and do electives in so many other areas, not just related to my core program. Like I was able to take courses in the printing school. I was able to take some photography courses. I was able to even do some industrial design courses. Uh, I always admired this style of marker rendering that was like popular in the 60s and 70s whenever they wanted to promote new products or prototype drawings for consumer products. This like really dramatic kind of marker renderings that were really powerful. I got to do an elective course in that in the industrial design school, and it was great. Um, so I think I was just really fortunate that I had parents that encouraged me, and I just found a really good program at RIT that really helped me grow.
I I love all of that so much, and it's very relatable. It's interesting. I feel like for me, growing up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, to say that, oh, I want to be a photographer, I want to be a dancer, I want to be a fill in the blank creative thing. I think it took me a while to be able to articulate that stuff. I mean, like for you, a little bit like when you're saying, maybe a teacher said, oh, you're going to do this, and um, maybe not exactly the same thing, but I don't think every child is necessarily like encouraged towards a creative career, or told that that's viable, even though everybody watches, like consumes entertainment like every day. You know, we're
Sure,
all reading things and seeing things and needing a break from things, and so it's there. But I think it's so interesting too, though, that your mom, really wanted you to go to art school, because I think that's uh, less common, and we had the opposite kind of thing in a way. I had wanted to go to film school in California, and the cost difference to do that or stay in state
right,
was so great. And so at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, well, instead of having a lot of debt and having and just going to an art school or something, specifically for film, I went to NC State. So I also went to a predominantly engineering school, but it does have a school of art and design, which is where my sister wound up. So that's interesting. Some similarities between where you went to school and where I went to school. And I think at first I kind of was like, man, I wish I'd been someplace where there was a stronger program for all the things I was interested in. But at least later, for sure, I came to a similar conclusion as what you're saying, that, I'm like, I'm not as creative as I am. As I like all the artsy stuff, but I'm drawn to also lots of people that are different than me. I appreciate the things that
sure,
other people are good at, and where their brains work in ways that mine doesn't. And so um I think there's value when we're around people that are bring different things to the table and all that stuff. And I think I wouldn't have done as well at just like an art school. I don't think that was fully me, because I was interested in other things and I studied abroad and whatever. And so anyways, I can totally relate to what you're saying about that experience. Um and then you went on to work in marketing for a bit, um which
I had a bunch of jobs just bouncing around all over, and I think that's more common in like art and design fields where um, you may get trained in one area, but because they're all related, you can end up doing so many things.
Mhm.
Um, One of my first jobs out of school, I was working for the local telephone company doing web development. Um, didn't really see that, when I started the program. And then that was a springboard. I went and worked for a magazine in Rochester. It was a lifestyle magazine called Rochester Magazine. And That was a really interesting experience. It's like, oh boy, I'm finally getting to work in magazines and publishing. This is great. It didn't last very long, but it was still a good experience. And then I ended up going back to New York, and I was working for Snapple. I was doing package design, like label design for Snapple and all their related brands, and that was a big jump. I never thought I'd be doing something in that field. And that was another eye-opening experience, working in that field with beverages and the food industry, and just something that's so directly targeted to consumers. I mean, you're designing the label that's on the bottle of Snapple. That's like, doesn't get that much more in your face on the shelf. You know, when
Mhm.
you're able to go in the supermarket and point to something, hey, like I did that, on my computer last week. That was really weird. Um, had experience there. I worked for another magazine after that. There was a publishing company in Westchester. They did a magazine called Westchester Magazine, also Hudson Valley Magazine. They did a couple other publications as well. So I got back into magazine publishing and design. And there I was working mostly on the production side, making sure that I was the bridge between the printing company and all of our editors, feeding in the content, get everything laid out, and then getting it to the printing company to get it produced. Um, and then from there, it was working at a marketing company. We did a lot of direct mail and a lot of really not so exciting things. It seemed like a good opportunity at the time. Again, it was a great environment. It was nice to be working in a studio with other designers. Um, a lot of the stuff we worked on was really dry corporate things.
Mhm.
Nothing nothing that you'd walk down the street and like someone would recognize. So that was kind of frustrating. It's like I was doing good work, but I'm like, all right, I just redesigned the bank statements for Citibank. Who cares about that, right? Um,
Whereas
so
now
just
you're pardon me.
well, and then it all worked out because around the same time I was thinking about leaving the marketing company, um, I had started doing some contract work for a company called Carson's Publications. I started a relationship with them back in 2000. I'd been reading their magazines for years. They published Railroad Model Craftsman, and they all published Railfan and Railroad. And I'd been reading them for years, and I finally got the nerve to put together an article for Railroad Model Craftsman, and they published my first article in 2000. That was really exciting. And from that first experience, I had submitted some drawings and some other materials with the article, and they're like, "Oh, do you do drafting?" And because we have a need for people who can do drawings for us, so I started on a contract basis doing some scale drawings for them and drafting and a couple articles here and there. So I was kind of kept that relationship on the back burner, and then I got to know the editor of Railfan and Railroad, Steve Barry. I got to know him, and he was looking for um, some changes to the magazine. He wanted me to redesign the logo, the masthead on the cover of the magazine, and I was up for it. I was pretty excited to do that. It's like you want me to make the next logo for your magazine. I'm here for it. Let's do it. And so this is leading into 2010, and just all through 2010, I'm working at the marketing company, and I'm like, I should really move on. I need to find the next thing. And over the years, I had offers from publishing companies uh, to go work for Model Railroad or go work for trains, but it wasn't the right time because I had a good job and I didn't want to jump ship. I also didn't want to move. I would have had to move to Milwaukee, Wisconsin if I wanted to work for Kalmbach. Not that that was a bad option, but the offer came in and I was pretty secure in my job and I didn't want to leave. And then I'd be looking for a job and they didn't have any openings. So it was always like two ships passing in the night. And I was doing all this work for Karstens and I'm billing them all as a freelance designer. And it got to the point where I'm like, I was billing them more than the equivalent of 40 hours a week. And it got to the point where I'm like, I think I can do this if I budget my time and my energy right. And I just said, if you guys hire me full time, you can just pay me a flat salary and we don't have to do any of this silly hourly billing stuff anymore. And it just worked out. And in 2011, I started working for Karstens and full time for Railfan and Railroad Magazine, still doing work on the side for Railroad Model Craftsman. And that's how I just fell into it. I just fell into the railroad publishing industry.
Wow. And now you're the editor of Railroad Model Craftsman.
So now I've been the editor of Railroad Model Craftsman since 2019, and I came on board Railfan and Railroad as an associate editor, and now I am managing editor. I've been managing editor since 2020, and in fact, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Railfan and Railroad magazine. We had a big anniversary celebration in New Jersey a couple weekends ago, and that was a lot of fun. And last year we celebrated the 90th anniversary of Railroad Model Craftsman. So I'm really excited to be part of two
Wow.
publications with such a long history in the industry.
Oh my God. Well, congratulations on the anniversaries.
Yeah,
And also I loved hearing your story. I mean, it was very inspiring, especially from telling us of like the first time you wrote an article for, and was that Railroad Model Craftsman?
yeah,
Yeah.
for Railroad Model Craftsman, I
And
actually wrote
now
a story.
becoming an
Oh,
editor.
is family arriving?
Yes. Just kidding. I love you guys so much.
No one's that excited to see me show up.
Oh no, I had enthusiasm for you too, Otto. Yeah, oh my gosh. Um, I loved hearing about your journey and stuff. It's very inspiring. And so tell me, okay, like you were saying, you kind of know the inside scoop on things in your role and you get to see some stuff and you get to hear about some stuff and people want you to come and write stories about what they're doing. And so is there anything in particular that you're maybe getting ready to do or see or write about that you're able to share, or that you have recently or in the past year is like a reflecting, like just yeah, any inside scoop stuff, or particularly uh cool access you've gotten to something to do or whatever.
It's really interesting on the model railroading side. Um, we have so many of the model manufacturers that support our magazine with advertising, and it's a two-way relationship. They're supporting us with advertising so we can produce the magazine, but also we're announcing all of their new products and letting people know, what's coming to market. And sometimes I learn about a new model sometimes months in advance, sometimes a year in advance, and I can't really talk about
Yep.
them, but it's exciting when they finally do come to market. Occasionally, there was a project a few years ago. Our friends at Rapido Trains, they were coming out with a product. It was actually a model of a locomotive that was used in New York. The FL9 diesel locomotive is a dual mode locomotive. It could either work off like draw electricity off a third rail, or it could run off its diesel engine. And these locomotives ran in commuter service for 60 years, only retired in 2009. And Rapido was making a model of them, and they turned out very nice. And it was just really fun that during the research phase, when they were doing some of their field work, I was helping them get some information, photographs of specific things that they were looking for, and it's kind of fun being involved in something like that, especially something I had a connection like from my childhood, and I grew up seeing these locomotives and things like that. Um, there's another project they're working on that's pretty close to my heart that can't really give away, but I was able to supply them some. I had some blueprints for this specific thing that they're going to be making, and they had mentioned. I, I was talking with one of them offline about something. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're thinking about making a whoopsie doodle," and I'm like, "I happen to have blueprints for that. Would that help you?" And So, it's fun when you're able to do things like that. Unfortunately, there's so much it's there's competitiveness only in that they're trying to protect their intellectual property. Um, but all the manufacturers are all working on their own projects. And it is a little bit of a roll of the dice because in model manufacturing, there's a very long gestation period for these things to come to market. Sometimes a period of 3 to 4 years, depending on the research and um, literally the development and the tooling for making these models. And that also depends on how many other products a company has in the pipeline. And they're trying to keep their pipeline moving, getting new products out. Um, and they're also trying to make sure that they don't duplicate the efforts of their competitors. So it's really kind of interesting industry on that side. I see Howard says that Railway Model in the UK celebrated 75 years, and that's pretty awesome. So I think that just speaks to how strong this model railroad hobby is, and especially what a viable industry is that we have so many magazines with this longevity.
Absolutely. I mean, again, back to when I was saying I was doing some research to kind of create this pitch for NBC and came across your quote. I did a lot of research on what is the state of affairs with the hobby, from model railroading to train travel, all the different things train related, and it's growing. I don't know. I found a lot of data that it's growing a lot. I don't.
There's a lot of people, and it comes up, and I've talked about this on other platforms. There's a really negative element of people that keep saying that the hobby is dying, whether it's enjoying real trains or building models. They keep saying the hobby is dying, and it's kind of infuriating because it's not infuriating. It's just upsetting to hear because the hobby is changing. It's always changing and it's always evolving, but it's not going away. And if the hobby was truly dying, why are there manufacturers coming out with new products, more products than we can even handle? Like, you know, sometimes I see these product announcements come out and I get this little pain in my wallet because I'm like, uh-oh, I want all of these things, and people even talk about like, oh, there's no young people getting to the hobby and there's no young people rail fanning. And the problem is there absolutely is. There's new people coming into this hobby every day, especially young people. The problem is the young people are not hanging out where the old people are. And so the people who've been in this hobby a long time, they don't see these new people coming
Mm,
in. And without going down this deep dark alley, sometimes people who've been in the hobby a long time practice a little bit of gatekeeping. Young people try to crack the door open. They're like, "Hey, can I come in? Like, is this cool?" And they're like, "No, it's not cool. Get out of here, kid." And without putting too fine a point on it, a lot of young people coming into the hobby aren't made to feel welcome. And I don't think it's for a lack of knowledge. Maybe it's the lack of experience that causes the divide. But I was like 8 or 9 years old before I figured out there were even other people interested in trains, let alone that there was a whole organized hobby behind it, let alone that there were magazines and clubs and museums and things. And now, whether you're a young person or an old person, you can be instantly connected with social media. You can meet other people, learn from other people.
mm,
There's discussion groups, there's forums, there's video programs like yours, there's other video producers. There's so much content and so much stuff that we can share. I meet young people just getting into the hobby and they'll memorize rosters of railroads. They'll memorize their favorite locomotive and all the details about it. They have access to all this information I didn't have to when I was growing up. It took me a long time to identify the sources, learn from them, navigate my way through the hobby. And I think that's where the divide comes from is that you have some people who have been in the hobby a very long time and they're used to the way that they did it, the way that they came up and the way they learned things. And I've also told people who say that the hobby is dying and that they feel like a lot of these new models coming out in the market that they're getting priced out and that they can't um, participate, or that some people are just buying their way into the hobby. It's like I bet we have friends, they don't know anything about golf, but they'll go out and buy a new $900 golf club set and think that they're an expert. Um, you can't buy your way into any hobby. You still have to have the experience and the fun and the learning and the fun and the doing. Um, and I always tell people there's lots of different ways to be in this hobby, and it doesn't have to be expensive. And um, I think we just have to look at more what brings us together and not focus on what the divides are and what drives us apart.
I I totally appreciate everything you're saying, as as always, as we move along here. Um, I think that I mean, part of what you're saying, the foundational piece is that there's a lot of value when their communities are intergenerational, when they're groups that are intergenerational, when we share wisdom passed down and passed up, and groups aren't just one kind of people or one age of people. And I I mean, the episode I released yesterday, again, I really noted, like, there were a lot of younger people, like, at the end after the Santa
Yeah,
Fe takes off. And I mean, um I don't say I'm going to find, this kind of person, or I'm going to specifically try to find this kind of person. I experience what I experience and I film it. But it was interesting to know, like, oh, this is cool, and I'm glad to also represent people younger than us.
yeah.
And well, pretty much, yeah. I think, well, most of them are like younger than us,
Well,
talking
it's
about
really hard to find people who are under 25, right?
under 25. Oh,
Like
right.
us,
'Cause yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's right. I know, it's got you. And then I was visiting with the Orange County model engineers like a week ago. And that was actually also, and that's all like live steamers, which was really heartwarming. But it was a really cool, unique thing where it was there were a lot of families there. Whereas when I visited with the LA Live Steamers, which is a really great experience, for example, it was almost all men and older, like, just whatever, yeah, men, and no kids, and
That hobby tends to skew older, and I think part of it is a couple of reasons. It's live steam is a very expensive hobby to get into, especially if you wanna own one of those locomotives, and I think also you have to be a certain age to have an appreciation for steam power. You either have to have a I don't I think there's very few people who have a firsthand memory of steam anymore. Um, steam engines being used in everyday railroading, that was gone by the 50s and 60s. And so I think that's why the live steam hobby tends to skew a little older. Not that there's other ways not to get into that hobby, but it's like, gosh, if you're really going to invest yourself in having like a small scale steam engine that you can ride on, that's not a small investment of time or experience or money.
definitely. When I met with the LA Live Steamers, one guy said, "Oh yeah, I built this, from scratch myself, and it's probably cost $100,000 or whatever." It was
Yeah,
some really, and I just remember being like, "Oh my gosh!" You
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I will say one difference that was, again, pretty cool, like last week, was that, well, first of all, one guy built his for 30,000. I was like, "That's more than like any car I bought
What a
here."
bargain. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But with them, their club is $40 US a year, and then you can use all the locomotives that are owned by the club. And so it's like, and the guy literally was like saying, I mean, like, you go to the movies a couple times or whatever, like, for that price to come out whenever and use
Right.
them for free. And then there were kids that, like, there was like an 8, 9-year-old I was talking to who had learned all the things, and he wasn't, old enough for like liability's sake to run things with the public. But I love seeing, and even so that was like definitely intergenerational. And then in my episode yesterday at Union Station on the Santa Fe, the guy who was the fireman, like, lighten everything up, talked about, oh, I was like, how did you learn how to do all this? Oh, I learned from some guys who learned from like the
Sure.
original guys that ran this engine. And so, anyways, just to your point, whenever we get different sorts of folks and different generations together and we're all sharing learning like we're doing right now, it's a really great thing. And but yeah, the hobby seems very, very vibrant to me. I mean, from my time spent in my dad's store to going to different events and then even doing research on train travel. And there's like been an upsurge, it seems, on like luxury train travel. And it's
Yeah.
not just in Europe or the Orient Express. It's like Norway has something coming out, the Norient. Peru has something going on down there. Anyways, so yeah, it's a growing hobby. I know. So Derek, he asked about the best way to get started and
Yeah,
start up.
Derek wanted to know. He says he's coming in. He's a later in life rail fan. He wants to get started. Um, what are the typical setup costs? Here's the best part: rail fanning is free. If you just, if you just want to start by you going trackside, you find a busy line, and like I'm lucky, like up here in Rochester, we have the CSX main line between New York and Chicago. There's like 20 trains a day. If I want to spend an afternoon, um, wouldn't need any other preparation other than finding a safe, comfortable spot to hang out and watching some trains come by. That's step number one. You want to take it to the next level. You can get yourself a radio scanner. You can pretty much get those inexpensively at any electronics store for like less than $30. Get yourself a little Uniden um, radio scanner. You can look up online to see what radio frequencies are used in your area. So if you're in North Carolina and you want to listen to Norfolk Southern, you can Google Norfolk Southern radio frequencies in North Carolina. It'll tell you what the frequencies are. You put them into the scanner. And even if you're not trackside, the scanner will still pick up the transmissions. You can hear the dispatcher talking to the train crews. Um, the next step after that is if you're interested in photography, you want to take train pictures, you can start with your cell phone. Smartphones are amazing digital cameras. They they're okay for action shots. They can be okay, but for the most part, you can get great photos starting out with your smartphone.
Pardon
You
me, I'll
want to take it?
just just
Yeah,
to add real fast. I mean, everything that I shoot for my YouTube channel is on my iPhone 15
right.
Pro Max, and
There,
I have a camera I've shot for Netflix, whatever, some major clients, A-list actors. It's a mirrorless camera, but it shoots in 4K video. Everything it shoots, I can get different things. There are reasons to use that and not use an
right.
iPhone. But the iPhone is just as high resolution, and yeah, so yeah, yeah,
I mean, it is amazing. We go to the store and we get our new phones every couple of years and we balk at the price, but it's like the spoiler is we're not really buying phones, we're buying really good digital cameras that happen to make phone calls.
that's very true. It's very true.
But again, so if you want to take it to the next level after that, it's really, you can find some you can go to your local, electronics shop and find decent cameras for a few $100s. I mean, really at the end of the day, and I think the point Lisa's trying to make too, you don't need to drop $2,000 on a DSLR to take good pictures or take good video. Um, the camera is just a tool, and it's really how you use it. I have a Samsung phone myself, and
Oh, they're
if
great.
I want to, I can get a tripod for it, and I can go take video with this, and
Mhm.
the video will be just as good as anything else. But really, at the end of the day, the hobby of rail fanning takes many different forms. Some people are happy to just go to a busy place and watch the trains go by. Some people enjoy the photography aspect of chasing trains. We have a few short line railroads around here that make for great chases because they run on reliable schedules. They run a little slower, so you can go from spot to spot and get ahead of them. Um, some people, Lisa and I were just talking about this, they travel. Some people book their travel just to go photograph trains. I live in New York. I want to go to Iowa and I want to shoot the Iowa Traction Railroad because it's the only electric freight railroad in America, and their locomotives are 100 years old. I will fly to Iowa just to take those pictures, or I will fly to California to go to the National Model Railroad Association convention. So that's another part of rail fanning, right? It's the travel aspect. You can
Mhm.
see plenty of trains around your house and where you live, or you might want to travel a different part of the country to see something different that you wouldn't see at home.
And I think in terms of like model railroading, like joining a club is like a great opportunity. And also,
It really is.
it's
Yeah.
a bunch of people like pooling their resources, creating a layout that's probably bigger than what anyone might have at
Mhm.
home. And then there's usually like the aspect of, like I have the episodes like my dad's a part of a train club, he sponsors it. And then they go set up at the train show every year at
Right.
this place or that place. And so you can participate in that way and kind of share your joy, if you want to, but have the community of that. So that's, and they're also, I filmed in the Santa Susana swap meet episode, shows you an example of some folks selling their used trains, pretty
Right.
inexpensively. I think when you're getting into, if you don't have a set at all and you were going to get into model railroading, then buying a kit where you kind of get everything in a box is one way to go. But when people get like really into it, then they, tend to like pick out, I want this locomotive and that and blah blah and put the things
Right.
together. But
And I think the other great thing about clubs too is that if you don't have the room to build a railroad, like let's say you live in an apartment or whatever it is, pay your membership fee and you join a club.
Mhm.
Um, some people don't enjoy the building part of it and they just want to run trains. Join a club, run your trains, bring your trains down there, run the club trains, whatever it is. Um, Sometimes clubs are great ways to learn because you can practice on the club layout. You can lay track, you can build scenery, you can learn how to do wiring, whatever it is. You can learn from the other club members and then go home and do it on your own layout. Or maybe those club members want to come and help you build your
Yeah,
home layout or whatever it is. I think that's like a really big part of this hobby is that you can enjoy it by yourself, or it's really a lot more fun when you do it with a friend, or a bunch of friends. Join a club, I've met other rail fans just being trackside. You develop friendships that way. Um, there's a lot to be said for doing things on your own, but also the whole community aspect of joining a club and getting involved, or you know, joining a railroad museum and getting experience. You know, some museums are also operating railroads. You get to learn how to actually work on real trains and operate real trains.
absolutely. I have to say that like I keep referring, especially the episode yesterday, being even me like watching watching the experience later, watching the episode myself. And when that guy in there is explaining, this throttle, you move it forward, it goes forward,
Right.
you move back, we're gonna leave it in neutral, and then you do this and this and blah blah blah. It really got me inspired to learn. I mean, I sat in the engineer's seat, but I didn't actually do it. And when I was at the Southern California Railway Museum, I mean, they have courses and trainings that you can do to operate both the locomotives and the trolleys and everything. And so there are places that have that as an opportunity. So I want to ask you about something, but for you guys who are also part of this, if there is something specific you're really curious to talk to Otto about, if you want to just write in the comments anything that you would like us to focus on, um, or a specific question. So feel free to do that. And then I'm going to just ask Otto one more thing, and then we'll see what, if you guys have anything to make sure you kind of get out of this what you want to get out of it. So I did want to talk about the fact that you're an active volunteer at the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum, as well as the fact that, again, this whole like us all being connected wherever we are, and you have kept coming up for me. I When I was filming at the Southern California Railway Museum, the third episode of the Sizzling Summer Part 3, there's a guy, Jason, and I film him. And then he came back in yesterday's episode when I ran into him at Union Station with the Santa Fe, and he's near the end and he brought his model Santa Fe. So, oh my gosh, where was I going with that? I was going with that. Oh, because Jason, who, is like, hey, you're going to be at the rail safety event. I hear from Jason sometimes. he sent me an article that you wrote. And it was really, again, really cool to get this article and be like,
Oh,
oh,
fun.
Otto, yeah, there's Otto. And it was about the new restoration of the New York Central Mohawk.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, that's pretty exciting.
So let's,
Um,
yeah, please tell.
yeah, so it's really interesting. So the New York Central Railroad was one of the largest railroads in America. Um, Served major cities from New York to Boston to Montreal, all the way out to Chicago, St. Louis, Louisville. I mean, New York Central was like one of the major Eastern railroads. And it's really interesting that for as large as New York Central was, there's very little preservation activity around that railroad. Little pieces here and there, a caboose, a freight car, this, that, maybe a diesel engine here or there, but nothing on the scale you might see from other railroads. And, it's always been kind of frustrating as someone who grew up in, you know, New York Central Territory and became a fan. And there's also not many steam locomotives that were saved from the New York Central. When the New York Central Railroad was converting to diesel in the mid 50s, they did offer locomotives to various cities online, major terminals they serve. They're like, hey, do you want one of these locomotives to show off, as a reminder of the old days? And all the cities were like, what? No, that's dumb. We don't like things. So they all got cut up. They all got scrapped. Um, only only a handful of large two large locomotives, two or three large locomotives got saved, and this one in particular, um, it's a 482 steam locomotive built by the American Locomotive Company, and railroads had nicknames for each wheel arrangement. New York Central called their 464 steam locomotives Hudsons for the Hudson Valley.
Mhm.
Um, New York Central is known as the water level route, because their railroad follows the very easy grade of the river. There's no mountain grades to go over. Um, so when they built the 482 locomotives, those were called mountain types on other railroads. Well, ain't no mountains on the New York Central, so they called them the Mohawk for the Mohawk River Valley, that they also followed. And so one of these Mohawk type locomotives was saved because it got sold to the Texas and Pacific Railroad, and moved to Texas for display. And it was on display in Dallas for many years, and it was decorated as a Texas and Pacific locomotive. Um, and then it got traded to um, it got moved up to Elkhart, Indiana, which was a big terminal on the New York Central. Got moved up there in the 80s or the 90s, I believe. It was on display at a museum called the National New York Central Museum. And it's a railroad museum right there. It's actually right across the tracks from the Elkhart train station. And it's one of two 482 Mohawks preserved. The other one's in the St. Louis Museum of Transportation. And there's a group called the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society, and they own and operate a locomotive, the nickel plate 765. And it's a Berkshire type steam locomotive named for the Berkshire Mountains, oddly enough.
Okay.
Um, but this locomotive has been in excursion service after being in regular service for many years. It's actually, I think it's been in excursion service longer than it was in regular service. But the Fort Wayne Society, they used to bring their engine all around the country, all around the region to operate it for excursions. They had the opportunity to run their engine on a piece of track that runs past their shops in Indiana. So now they run their regular excursions there, and they're expanding their operations. They needed more passenger cars. They came to our museum. They knew that we had a set of New York Central passenger cars that we weren't using, and we decided to make them available to this group because we're like, we had this 7-car train built 1941, and it was some cars from a train called the Empire State Express, and they're all New York Central coaches, and we had used them for many years in excursions that we ran. But in the last few years, we weren't able to run the cars, and we weren't really able to give them the attention they needed. And we sat down as a board and we said, gosh, we can sell them to Fort Wayne. We know they're going to restore them, and we know they're going to run them. And if we want any hope of keeping the 7-car train together, we're going to sell it to Fort Wayne.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're going to sell it onesie twosie, and the whole set's going to be dispersed. And yeah, the cars will still be around, but they won't be together in a set. So a couple of years ago, we made the decision. We sold the train set to Fort Wayne. Well, why did I tell you all this? Well, part of the reason that we sold the train to Fort Wayne is they tipped us off total secret that they were working on acquiring the Mohawk from the city of Elkhart, and that we would have an opportunity to see our 1941 New York Central train being pulled as it would have been by a 1940s steam locomotive on a piece of New York Central track in Indiana. And we said, that sounds pretty good to us. Let's make it happen. And so earlier this year, Fort Wayne Society made this huge announcement that they successfully acquired the locomotive and that they're going to be moving it to their shops in Indiana, and they're going to be working on getting this engine restored and operational in conjunction with the coaches they purchased from us. And that was really exciting to play a small part in that, but also just really exciting to see that a large mainline steam locomotive from the New York Central is finally going to be restored to operation. And in our lifetime, we're going to see a recreation of an actual 1940s New York Central passenger train.
Yay.
It's really, and I think in America, what's interesting about that too is that we see locomotives restored, we see individual cars restored, and very rarely do we have the opportunity to recreate an entire train.
Yeah.
And I think that's just how the preservation industry works. We don't have the luxury of being like, oh, we want to recreate a Burlington branch line train from the 1960s or a Great Northern Streamliner from the 1950s. We take what we can get, we assemble the best trains that we can, but we to have the opportunity to actually, here's going to be a whole New York Central passenger train of the
Mhm.
1940s. That's what's special about this opportunity.
Right. I mean, to have all the pieces that things haven't been scrapped, to have and the expense
Right.
to restore multiple.
And we've already seen a piece of that. Fort Wayne Society recently completed restoration of one of our coaches, and they're putting it on their Christmas train this season. They spent almost $300,000, and I saw the photos they sent me them. They had this coach tore down back to the bones, and they rebuilt it from the ground up. All new electrical, all new HVAC. Um, and that car is going to run for another 80 years. It's phenomenal,
Right.
but that's the real investment it takes to keep these things, excuse me, going. Excuse me. And the steam locomotive, um, just the initial cost to move it to their shops in Indiana, that's going to be a couple $100,000 right there. The total bill to restore the locomotive, it's going to be, between $3 and $4 million to do all the things to make a steam locomotive run in the 21st century. It's going to be a major undertaking. So there's going to be a lot of fundraising involved. There could be fundraising for individual aspects of each part of the restoration. But when it's all said and done, it's probably going to be between $3 and $4 million.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I always admire people who have a vision and then that sounds very challenging to make all of this stuff happen, but we know people are doing it and have done it, and so it's very inspiring when people have the vision and and follow through on all the many steps to make something happen.
And I think that's why Fort Wayne's going to have great success, because they have a proven track record with the 765, and they
Hmm.
have a fully operational steam shop and the expertise to make it happen.
Yeah.
Um, and plus, what's really interesting is that with so many projects going on at the same time right now in America, like all across the country, there's big steam projects. There's a small cottage industry of experts that have cropped up, people who are experts in boilers and running gear and just all the individual aspects of getting an engine running. So if there's an organization out there that's working with their own project, maybe they have 75% of the expertise in house. They can go to some of these contractors and bring some of that expertise in temporarily. Or there's shops around the country. You can, if you don't have the machinery to, like, say, machine a new set of drivers, you can hire a company. There's a few shops around the country. You can send that work out to be done. Um, Derek, I'm sorry, Howard had
Well,
a question
yes, yeah, Howard, exactly.
about the future of steam in America with the coal supply. It's not so much that the coal supply is reducing, and I know over in the UK they're having a challenge too with finding enough coal supply to keep their heritage railways going. Um, Even in the 1950s, the railroads that were still using steam engines, a lot of them, especially out west, were already converting to oil fired. Um, just for greater efficiency, and just for having a ready supply of fuel. So even railroads in the 50s were looking at converting to oil, and there's a lot of large steam projects right now where maybe they were coal burners, but they've just said, like, you know what, just for the fuel security aspect of it, we're going to convert
Mhm.
to oil burning, and um, we're not even going to worry about the coal aspect. Uh, there's still a ready supply of coal in America, and it's not that it's hard to get, but there are several factors with coal. It's flat out messier. End of the day, you have to clean out the grate, and you have to have somewhere to dump all that ash and cinder, and you know that's a messy aspect of it.
Can I
Um,
just say real fast? Someone
yeah,
actually literally commented, sorry, on my episode yesterday, the Santa Fe, 3751. Like, how does it you didn't get, so dirty? Like, people used to just get covered. You see them go in and they come out and they just be like, shh. Yeah. And then another guy commented, like, oh, I'm sure it's nice now that like for the firemen that it's just oil,
I mean,
Anyways,
it's the thing, the literal soot and cinder and just everything.
but for
Um,
people's health too. I mean, the
right.
environment, the people working on it. I don't know. I mean,
It's one thing to, like, the occasional exposure. Like, I remember the first time I saw working steam, it was coal fired, and there's no replacement for those sights and smells of what that is. Um, there's still plenty of sights and smell with oil fired steam. It's not a different experience at all. But the other thing is it also reduces fire danger. I know there's a lot of
mhm,
areas out west that are more susceptible to wildfire, especially in the summertime. Um,
yeah.
um, Durango and Silverton had a really horrific wildfire in Colorado a couple of years ago. They're in the process of converting all their coal-fired engines to oil just to
Oh
reduce the
wow.
chance of fire. So again, just to answer your question, Howard, I think the answer is a lot of the new projects are just right off the bat converting to oil. And I think we'll just see what it takes in the future. In America, we have a requirement every it's called the 1472 rebuild because after 1,472 service days, there's a federally mandated the engine has to be completely tore down and rebuilt down to the boiler for safety reasons. So I think when a lot of these locomotives come up for their mandatory rebuild, you may see some of these organizations say, well, gosh, now's the time while we're doing the rebuild, might as well go to oil firing. So I think we may see that in the next generation. We'll see what happens.
And now for Derek. Derek wants to know our fantasy dream trips. Do you want to go first or?
Oh gosh. Um, I have one that's on my bucket list and I need to do it sooner rather than later. It's riding Via Rails Canadian across the country. And it's something I've wanted to do for years. And the reason I wanted to do it is that Via Rail Canada, a lot of their equipment on the long distance trains, it's still that same streamlined equipment from the 1940s and 1950s. It's been rebuilt over the years to modern standards, but it's essentially the 1950s streamliner experience complete with like dome car and observation car and all of that. And I wanted to do that for a long time, ride the Canadian from Toronto to Vancouver, and then I don't know, maybe I take another train, from America, to get back. But I think definitely doing the Canadian across the country is high on my list of trips I want to do, and I need to do it soon because in the next couple of years, Via Rail will be replacing that equipment, and all that classic streamliner stuff is going to go away. So I want to do that soon.
Oh my God,
So
that sounds so amazing. As you were
yeah,
describing that, I was thinking about pictures I'd seen, and then I was thinking about somebody recommended to me even just well, the Amtrak from New York City to Montreal to
yeah,
Montreal.
The Adirondack. That's a
And it's
beautiful
a,
trip. Yeah.
yeah, to do that and then to go all the way across. And then I have a cousin getting married in Seattle next year, beginning of September. So I've been like contemplating taking the train all the way up there, which a friend of mine has done and loved. And um, but I know there's so many places to go. And the more you look up this stuff, the more the cyber world knows that you're interested. So I keep getting things like, oh, there's this cool new luxury train in Italy, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Who would want to do this? Or like I said, I have a friend who's a writer as well, and she does some work with like a luxury travel, like a small kind of luxury travel cruise company, and they have something going on where it's like one way. I forget what you do one way. Maybe you hike one way or you something, but then you take the train back in Peru. And I know Belmond is launching a bunch of fancy things all over the place. There's, I mean, I love France, and I've been so intrigued by Turkey like for a little while, and I haven't been there. And there are a bunch of places along the like classic Orient Express route
Sure.
that I've not been to. And so that is like really been on my mind. And in fact, and even just to almost come full circle, like with that one, I quoted you earlier saying I stumbled upon your quote, there's something exciting about trains that transcend cultures. And when I did the episode in the whistle stop, I ran into a French girl, and we started going off in French, and she was looking for the Orient Express there. And anyways, I love all this cross-cultural stuff and connections. There's so many amazing train trips that could be taken. I can't. It's like,
I mean, if I was a little more adventurous, I mean, I'd love to visit the UK and the heritage railways, but also, you know, the whole network of European railways is so different from America, where it's like we travel from state to state. You can travel from country to country
Mhm.
very easily using the railways. And I don't know, I'd love to visit France, by train. I'd love to do, I've seen um, the railways in the Alps, over the Swiss Alps.
Mhm.
I'd love to do all of that, and I think it's very once you arrive in Europe, it's very easy to travel around Europe. To base
Right.
yourself there for a couple weeks and travel around. I think the hard part's getting there, but once you're there, it's relatively easy. I would definitely want someone who is well versed in the European railways to go with me because I'm pretty good at getting around the New York City subway. I can figure out your local light rail system. I can take a trip on the commuter rail. I think I would be absolutely lost. Never mind trying to make a connection at some major terminal, but trying to go from country to country and figuring out. My French is a little rusty from high school, and I'm just imagining trying to like make some international connection and just ending up in Bulgaria by accident. Nobody wants that. So
That's so okay. That's hilarious that you said all that. But first of all, I'm having a flashback to last year when I was traveling around Europe by train and literally like running around the train station from point A to point B to point F, like trying to ask questions and trying to make trains. But the only time I remember getting on a train and going the wrong direction and for way too long and winding up like who knows where was actually in New York City.
that will
Because
happen.
yeah, I think I've had a harder time of year. I lived in France, and for Howard, I lived in Lille, and so it was like an hour train ride to Paris. So I did that a whole bunch of times that semester. I never took the Channel. I never, went across to London from there. Then I have been to England, but I'm trying to remember if I've taken a train there. But I've definitely taken the train in like Italy and other a lot, mostly in France, but
You
also
know,
to, yeah, some other places.
funny story about well, too many trains going in different directions. When I worked in Connecticut, I had a job. I was actually pretty lucky. I could from my apartment. I could walk across the street, take the train to Connecticut to go to my marketing job, and I had to change trains at a place called Stamford, Connecticut. Um, and it's where locals and expresses meet. One of the branch lines terminates there. There's also Amtrak trains, commuter trains. So for like this small city in Connecticut, there's a lot of things going on, especially at rush hour. You have the expresses, the locals, Amtrak showing up. Everything's happening all at once. I'm coming home from work and I'm making my connection. I had to change from an express train to a local train to get home, and happened every night. And I'm just on the platform waiting for my train to show up. And there's this couple, and they have sure sign of a tourist. They have the timetable open, and I hear all this excited chatter, and it's in French. And they're like, "No, no, no!" I could tell there's some. They're arguing between the two. It was a group of them. It was like three or four of them, and they're all trying to figure out. And I'm like, against my better judgment, I kind of went up, and I'm like, "Hey, can I help you guys?" And their confusion was they saw that there were multiple trains going to New York, but some were the stopping train, the local train, and some were the express. And there were confusion over their tickets. And because in Europe, faster trains means more money, slower trains cheaper, different class of tickets, first class, second class, all this stuff. And we had a little bit of a language barrier too, but I could tell they're trying to get to New York. And I just mustered up my best high school French, and I'm like, "Grande vitesse, plus tard, même billet." Great speed, slow train, same ticket. And they're like, "We're all set, thank you."
Well,
And I got
well done. Très très bien, Otto.
and I got them to New York, and I hope they had a good time.
Oh gosh, I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so perfect. I just I could talk to you for hours, I mean, I think I got through a lot of the things that I wanted to chat with you about, but there's can you tell us all real fast. So I know personally I read a lot online for sure, and I know your publications have plenty online. I also really I like a good hard copy thing. Like I like making
Sure.
lists on paper with a pen. I like journaling. I like buying magazines and something tactile, and I feel like that's also a different experience, and it's nice that we have both options these days. um you are going to give folks a special discount, and I want to hear about that, and also just like what kinds of things someone would get from your two different publications,
Sure.
online versus in the actual magazine, and yeah.
Well, if I could, I have something I wanted to share. Do I have it here? Um, so I mentioned this is the 50th anniversary of Railfan and Railroad. Um, this is this is volume one, number one from winter 1974, and it has a steam locomotive on it. It's not the 765, but it's another locomotive. Nickel plate 759 is in this photo. And for our 50th anniversary, we thought it was appropriate to put the 759 back on the cover again. And in this photo, what we're doing is 759 has not run for I think 40 years now. It got retired in 77. Um, but it's at Steamtown in Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's on display. And our editor, Steve Barry, he orchestrated a photo shoot at Steamtown, and they did some, they got the headlight turned on and they had some smoke effects. So it looks like the engine's running, but this is at Steamtown 50 years later, and we have the 759 back on the cover. So that seemed kind of important to us. Um, and then again, this is this was our November issue. This is the December issue of Railfan. We have Big Boy on the cover. Big Boy's been making a lot of news lately, doing a big barnstorming tour around the West. And our December issue, it's also an expanded issue celebrating our anniversary. But we have three big stories about Union Pacific steam locomotives in this issue. So that's a lot of fun. And then the December issue of Railroad Model Craftsman. This is the other magazine I work on. Um, all about modeling and scale models. Every month we tour someone's home layout. You get to see just a in both magazines, we try to do a wide range of coverage. In Railfan, we cover not only contemporary railroading, but we also cover a lot of classic railroading, steam, diesel, passenger trains, freight trains from all over the country. And we don't write a lot of the content. A lot of it comes from our readers because the magazine is really a reflection of our readership. You're not you're not subscribing to hear from me every month. You are subscribing to see what we've curated and selected for you. One of my friends told me, he's like, "Well, why would I get your magazine? I can just go on Rail Pictures or Flickr and I can just find all these train pictures for free." And I'm like, you absolutely can. And there's a lot of great free content online. And there's also a lot of garbage online too. So, do you want to waste your time sifting through everything to find the quality stuff?
Mhm.
Or maybe you trust us to present to you a portfolio and a showcase of what we think is the best curated stuff this month. And that goes for the model side too. Me and my staff are always keeping a lookout. We have a bunch of authors who feed us with some regular stuff, but we're online all the time. I'm on different groups, just looking for great modeling, and I reach out to people like, "Hey, that's a great model. You should write about that and put it in the magazine." And they're like, "Who, me?" And I'm like, "Yes, you. This is what we do." Um, I'll be online. I'm in a bunch of Railfan groups on Facebook for areas I don't know anything about, but like I'll be in like the Arkansas Railfan group, and I'll see someone has a great photo, and I'm like, "Hey, I don't know about this railroad. Send me this photo. We can use it." "Oh, you have a lot of great photos of this railroad. Do you want to write an article about it? I don't know anything about this railroad." So that's really what our magazines are about. Railfan, we're about sharing the trackside experience. We are written for the active rail fan. The people who go out and take pictures, the people who travel, the people who volunteer on steam engines, the people who enjoy watching and riding steam engines. It's just it's for the active people who like to experience what it's like to be trackside. And for Railroad Model Craftsman, it's for the active hobbyists. You're building, you're modeling. Even if you're not building your own railroad, maybe you're just building models, putting them on the shelf. Maybe you're building models and building them for the club layout. Um, Whatever it is, however you're experiencing the hobby, Railroad Model Craftsman is for you. We try to hit on all aspects of modeling. We do a fair amount of history as well because we're building scale models that represent the real thing. And realism is the ultimate goal for the people who subscribe. And for those of us who are with those of us who are here with us tonight, we have a special discount code for you. If you visit our online bookstore, White River Productions is our publisher. We have our online bookstore at shop.whiteriverproductions.com. You visit the bookstore, and at checkout, you type in the discount code Lisa24, Lisa24, and that's going to get you a discount on your purchase. That's right, Lisa24. That's going to be calculated at checkout. It's good for discounts on subscriptions, renewals, but also pretty much anything in our bookstore. We publish a wide variety of books for railroaders, for modelers. Um, Besides Railfan and Railroad, besides Railroad Model Craftsman, we also publish a variety of other magazines about various aspects of railroading. Check them out. Lisa24 is gonna be your discount code. It's gonna be good all week. So from this time, from 1 week out from tonight, use it on the bookstore, and please explore the world of railroading with White River Productions.
So I'm going to email all you guys who are on right now and who will watch this later with that discount code. Easy to remember, Lisa 24. But just in case, I'll email you the discount code with a link to the website where you can find things. And just a quick question about that, Otto. When people get a subscription, is an option like just online, or if they get an online, is it the hard copy and online,
Sure.
or?
So we offer people the option of either doing print or digital editions. Um, we don't offer a combo at this time, but if you'd rather not have a bunch of magazines stacked up in your house, the digital subscription is a good way to go, especially for our foreign subscribers. What really kills us is the postage rate, which we unfortunately don't have any control over. But foreign postage and foreign shipping is just beyond our control, and it's kind of astronomical at this point. If you're considering a subscription to our magazines, we definitely encourage you to get the digital edition instead of the print. But it's a very similar experience getting the print edition versus the digital edition. Me personally, I just happen to enjoy the print edition myself. I kind of like snuggling up in my favorite reading chair, just in bed or just wherever I am. And it's the design aspect too, how we package the magazine for you each month. It's definitely a powerful way to experience it in print for sure.
So pretty much the same content either way. You pick the delivery. You pick the kind of experience that works best for you.
That's right. Yep.
I love
Same
that.
same content.
Yeah, same
Grand
content.
vitesse, plus tard, même billet.
Right, right, exactly. Oh my gosh. And I love, just to sort of backtrack for a quick hot second. Howard said he has been talking about traveling to Canada. And I know I was also checking out like Rocky Mountaineer and like Banff. And I mean, just some of these beautiful blue lakes. And so, yeah, I think the lots of cool options. I'm really glad though, what you mentioned, Otto, and also about doing that trip sooner rather than later. So thank you for that kind of important information. I'm so thankful to have had you all with us. Thank you, Otto. It was really nice to like see you again and get
Yeah.
to chat more. Like I said, I mean, it's like an hour and a half went by like in a flash, and I feel like we could chat for many more hours. And I really appreciate you sharing the discount code to your publication and publications, really. And thank you all for being here today. I really appreciated the opportunity to get the live comments and the live questions, and and there will be another event next week, next Sunday. Speaking of younger railroaders, who's the Alex from the Fullerton Train Museum, who's also a teenager and very knowledgeable. So he'll be sharing some with us, and of course, I'll have more episodes out in the coming, well, in a week. Pretty much do one a week at least. So you'll see that. But I really appreciate you being a part of this live experience today. And Otto, like, thank you so much for taking time on your Sunday
Yeah.
evening to
Thanks for
be
having
here.
me. Glad to be here. I'm glad we got to do this.
Love learning more about you and everything. So thank you. Thank you all. Sleep tight, Howard. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Otto. And have a wonderful week and a wonderful Thanksgiving to those of you who are celebrating that. And oh, it's Monday. It's Monday. Okay. Welcome. Welcome the new week, Howard. That's right. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, good wishes to all of you. And thank you so much. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Take care.